Right, okay, so got a new month and a new project. So this is a project that I chose, which I think was quite an interesting project. So the idea of this one is something inspired by the masters, either the modern masters, the old masters, or just really any artists that you feel inspired by. Really, it could be contemporary artists if you've got particular contemporary artists that you like. So there's various ways that you could tackle this as a project, and I'll do a couple of little demos as we go along over the next couple of weeks. You could do something like a straightforward copy of the painting. So I kind of picked this one out at random this morning. This is by an artist called Chardin. I'm not exactly sure when he was around. I think it might have been maybe 18th century, something like that. And he was famous for still lives. He did these quite sort of simple looking still lives, but very nicely composed, really lovely balance still lives. They're not over exuberant, they're quite modest, but they're quite lovely in their own way. So he's an artist I always like. So yeah, I'll do a little demo in a minute. So in terms of so that's one idea, that's one way you could work, is just to copy either a painting or either sketches. You could do some sketches. When I was on art school many years ago, working from the masters was something that we're very much encouraged to do as part of our art education. So this is a sketchbook from about 1984. Yep. And I remember this was a project, we used this painting by Tintoretto as a project. And the idea was to sort of analyse the painting, do some sketches, and we actually made little models of some of the figures and things like that, sort of try and analyse the space that the artist was using. So in this case, it's a very big painting that's in the National Gallery, this one. And basically it's sort of doing a very wide space, sort of very wide angle. So we did, we looked at the painting, I've got lots of sketches in here of some of the figures in the paintings and things like that.
You shot one before.
Yeah, we'll come back in a minute. Right. Yeah, so these are some of the different figures. But I was looking for a particular sketch this morning that I remember, but they're just looking through my old sketches. I found quite a few sketches I've done as a student. That would be a Rembrandt, a Vermeer. And copying work is a really good way of just trying to analyse, well, it's a really good way of just looking at things. Just like if we draw an object, we look at it really carefully in a way that we wouldn't do if we were just glancing at it or walking, passing by. So, you really get to analyse the painting by sketching it or even painting it. You start to see some of the compositional devices that the artists use and that sort of thing. So how artists design their pictures, how they put them together. So that's a really beneficial thing for just looking and copying. Another way you could work is to maybe look at an artist's style and maybe interpret another image in that style. So that's something. So basically something inspired by another artist. So it may be that if you're used to working in a very photographic style, you might look at an artist like Turner and perhaps go for something a little bit more painterly, a little bit more expressive, or vice versa. If you're very free and lively with your brushwork, you might want to work a little bit tighter. So there's different things you can do. I've got here, I'll show you some of the resources. I brought these in last week just to show you, but I've got a couple of folders. There's about 3 of these different folders with different images in them. So if you wanted to borrow any of these, you're welcome to, obviously for the duration of the project. Most of them I've only got one copy of. So if multiple people wanted the same one, I'd need to sort of copy them. But if it's just 1 or 2 people, so there's all sorts of different things from all sorts of ages. Some are old masters, some are modern masters. Like that looks like that's more of a modern painting. So I mean, it may be that you might like that particular style, but have an image of your own, and you want to try and interpret that in another style. So again, that will be a demo that I'll do perhaps in weeks to come. Sort of, stylistic influences. The books I've got down the bottom are more like artist technique. So obviously, if you want, you're welcome to have a look at those as well. There's different things in there. So I think that's probably it. So this one here, I'm basically using oils today, which might be interesting, trying oils. So these are actually water mixable oils, but they're really, the process is exactly the same. I use, really for my own work, I generally use traditional oils, which I do in my studio space or if I go and work outside. For teaching, I just find it quicker and easier to wash out the brushes, really, just using these, because you need some solvents with the traditional ones, and it just saves me carrying solvents around. But I do use this one, the traditional ones. I've just started sketching, so I use this one as inspiration. I've started sketching it out. I used to just use just a lightish kind of yellowy brown to sketch out. So I've got a bit of burnt umber and I think it's yellow ochre here mixed together. I don't want it too dark, but that gives me something that's strong enough to see. And I've started with a jug because that's really the main focus of the image, and work my way down. You can see there's a few lines that are in the wrong place. So the nice thing about the oils is they're not going to dry too quickly. So I could get a bit of water or a bit of solvent and just alter my drawing as I go. So that line that's too high, this one here, that one there can come out. So it's quite easy to manipulate the paint. With acrylics, I tend to draw out with some sort of pastel pencil because the lines will dry really almost instantly with acrylics, which I find a bit harder to work with really. So it means that the drawing I can keep refining as I go. I'll just come a bit further back. Also, drawing with a brush, I basically just find a little brush, either a little flat brush or a little pointed brush. I find they're fine. I don't worry about the drawing being absolutely accurate at this stage because I can sharpen up the drawing with my brushes anywhere as I go. So basically you just want to make sure things are in about the right sort of area. I've got another little bottom here. And then we've got a big vertical here and a horizontal here. I'm talking a bit about this one this morning, just really noticing how that is very much the focal area, and he's created that by having sort of light subject on a dark background, or a darker background. So that really does draw your eye in here, whereas the box is, similar colour to the background. It gives a nice contrast to these sort of slightly rounded forms. This pipe here, that really leads your eye into this area. And that contrasts with the strong vertical and strong horizontal. So it's almost like you kind of framed that bit of the picture with that. That takes you in. Now I notice there's another little pipe here. So as you come down here, the little pipe kind of takes your eye out, and perhaps into this cup area. So it's really sort of lovely the way he's composed the image. Once I've got that in and I've got the drawing in place, you can, I usually then, there's different ways of building paintings up. You could just make a tone layer of paint first. So I'll give you a couple of options. So one way is to almost like just extend the drawing out a little bit and just get all the lights and darks in. So this area is going to be quite dark. So this is just thinning the paint with either the water or the solvent. I won't paint everything, but I'll just give you a So we've got a strong shadow there, slightly lighter. Just using brown and blue and a little bit of yellow ochre so far. I'm not going to worry too much about the colour. And then there isn't masses of colour in there really. It's quite quite simple colours. And then the background, just a tiny bit of white of that. Just want to kind of get some darker tones in the background. So far I've really not particularly used white because in oil paints white slows down the drying a bit. So this, if I just use blues and browns, that will dry very quickly, and I can either get onto the next layer later on in the day, tomorrow, something like that. Also, if I put the paint on quite thinly, some of it gets absorbed by the board, and it's very easy then to overpaint with another layer. That would want to be perhaps a little bit darker, quite a strong darker box. And as I say, any areas I want to lift out, I can just get a clean brush, just lift little bits out where the paint's gone right down it. Like that. And then perhaps a little bit of, go to a slightly small brush. So just on the jug, there's a bit of shadow here. There's actually a little bit dark in the background, so that could go in a darker shadow just here and on the edge of the handle here. Like that. So, and then there's a shadow in here. So that would be, if I kept that heavy, that could be underpainting. And then I could come back another day and just work another layer on the top. The other good thing about working this way, particularly if you've got, I tend to paint on slightly toned boards or canvases anyway. So this one's actually a slightly but it's also, if you've got a white canvas or white, it's just a way of blocking out all that white. So it's a bit like if you're going to paint in your house, paint a brown door, you might undercoat it in grey. So it gives you a layer of paint, and then the top layer can go over the top. So that's one way you could work. So if I was going to do the next layer, we've got some slightly bluey greens in the background there. So this was if I was coming back the next day and want to work these colours up a little bit. I've got a nice strong, slightly bluey grey there. And there's a bit of shadow on the top there. Top of the other thing is, once you've got a thin layer, I tend to, if I want to thin the paint, I then use a medium. So the medium is a mixture of either, solvent and then linseed oil. So a little bit of linseed oil in that. So this one is for the water mixable oil, so it's similar to the traditional one. So again, it just helps the paint to flow. So I can get a nice sort of fluid line at the edge of that little box there, which actually I've taken too far. It must have ended up there in the box. Back. That can move to there. The background, I might want to create another brown, but perhaps add a little bit of white at this stage. And that will give me a more opaque. So that will kind of block out any colour that's behind there. Or it can be sort of semi-transparent, or semi-opaque, whichever way you look at it. Like that. And then for the jug itself, I tend to start with the darker areas like the shadows in here, and then I'll mix a slightly creamy colour with white and white here, and a little bit of yellow ochre. Tiny bit of red. I've got any red there yet. To me, it's got a very slightly pinky tinge to it. Something a little bit like that. Not too bright. The nice thing is, any areas where I want to blend the paint, like there, I can just sort of run the two colours in together and get a nice transition from the light to dark. So that is so much not sort of easier in oils than if you've got acrylics that would dry. You know, if you want to get like a smooth blend, this can be nice over here. There. Just soften that out a little bit there. And keep that going with the handle. And anywhere that's just slightly lighter, like it might be just a tiny bit lighter here, I can just work some of that pure white into that. Helps to give that slightly subtle. Let's just kind of carry on either direction. So a little bit of oil demo. Does that help? Does that help get you started? Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's a nice paint because you can just manipulate it and keep manipulating it quite a long time. It's got a nice long work time. The difficulty, I suppose, is where you've got wet areas and you want to lean on here. Sometimes if you've got big area that's wet, you can get a stick or something like that and just lean on the stick so that I can steady my hand.
Paul,
Yep.
did you say that the water-based oils, you still got to use linseed oil?
You can if you want to, yeah.
You still can use it at the same time?
Yeah, it's basically a modified linseed oil that's suitable for paints. You don't have to, but it will help the paint to flow if you want thinner areas. So yeah, you can use it straight up too. Mine are a bit old and a bit stiff, so you need a bit of oil. Exactly.
Okay.